Fantasy Baseball Q&A. Tarek Samulski, James Schiano. James, how you doing?
Really good, Eric. I'm excited to get some weather, some football, some baseball. This is a great nexus time of the year. It's kind of the most beautiful time for sports fans.
Yeah, it's a frustrating time for sports writers just because there's so much to do. I'm underwater a little bit, but it's great as a sports fan. There's constantly stuff to watch. Your Mets firmly in the playoff picture right now.
One game is not firm.
Let me ask you.
Yeah.
What is your actual confidence level that the Mets are going to end the season in the playoffs?
It's relatively high. I think I'm probably 10 percentage points higher than where Fangraphs has of right now. And I think the Habs about 56%, just because the shape of the Brave season is like their pitching is so good, but they have so few bats right now and they're struggling to score runs every single night. So I'm hoping that we can just play our 3 games against them and take care of business. Also, the Diamondbacks has been a step back after the crazy August. It just feels like between both of those teams and us, we're playing significantly better. We have the 3 games against the Braves. It's just take care of business time. I think the Mets again are playing well enough that they can outlast both of them.
And do you think they can make some noise if they get into the postseason?
I mean, it depends on the matchup. I'm not afraid of the Brewers. And I'd like to play the Brewers because I think it's the last 5 times the Brewers have made the playoffs. Whoever defeated them and knocked them out of the playoffs has gone to the World Series in the National League, which is a really stupid, silly fact. But I don't know. This Mets team is not very good, but I don't think any of these National League teams are really that good besides truly right now the Dodgers and the Phillies. And it's been that way the entire season. So just get in. Shamaniah has been elite. Let him pitch game 1. Luis Severino has been good enough. Let him pitch game 2. See just what happens from there and just start playing ball.
Yep, I agree with that for sure. Let's talk about some big news. I'm going to ask my own question in the chat, and we're going to talk about it up here. What are your expectations for Kumar Rocker in his debut? We know he is getting called up. He's going to take the ball on Wednesday. It's the start that I think was going to go to Jack Leiter. Unfortunately, it was the start that was also going to go to our boy Cody Bradford, but now Cody Bradford gets the Diamondbacks and Rocker gets the Seahawks. But what do you think?
Mariners.
Sorry, Mariners. This is that football brain. I saw Seattle, and I just went Seahawks. He'd probably do poorly against the Seahawks, even though he is a large human being. But what do you expect him to do against the Mariners?
I expect him to be good. I mean, this fastball is a very unique shape. I think it was TJ Stats on Twitter that put out the comps to it based on his release height, his extension, and his velocity. And the only comp in Major League Baseball was Paul Skeens, which I think that's a good place to start for a fastball just because he throws it so freaking hard. But Rocker has an amazing slider, and he's going to throw that pitch probably 30-40% of the time. And he's comfortable throwing against guys from both sides of the plate because it's a 2-plane slider. So he's going to try and really hammer the back foot against the opposite handedness. I think he's going to be good. He's been pitching pretty deep, relatively deep into games in AAA. I don't see any issue with hunting for a win, a quality start here for Rocker. I think that this is going to be a pretty legit pitching debut, and it's kind of rare to get one this late in the season, especially when it looks like the Rangers are about to roll with a 7-man rotation now moving forward here for the next 2 weeks of the season.
Wild. I agree with you. You know, Nick Pollock and I have talked about Kumar Rocker on the Corner podcast. Nick is a big proponent, and I agree in the idea that like having that foundational fastball as a prospect pitcher coming up is so much more important than like, oh, he's got one whiff pitch or whatever. You really need to be able to get ahead. You really need to be able to command the zone. And having a great whiff pitch is fine, but if you can't actually throw strikes consistently and get called strikes and swinging strikes on a fastball against major league hitters, you're not going to succeed. You know, I know people look at like the IVB on Kumar Rocker's fastball and they're like, oh, the IVB sucks. It's like, I think it's like 11 inches or whatever, but he's got 7 feet of extension while throwing 98 miles an hour. So like the perceived velocity when you are throwing 98 miles an hour with 7 feet of extension, that's like 105, 106 mile an hour fastball. And if you're going to command that for strikes, you're going to get ahead of guys. And then you mentioned the 2-plane slider. So I'm pretty excited for Kumar Rocker. I really want to watch that start. I think it'll be a really good start.
It's going to be against Bryce Miller too. So it's going to be a real marquee pitching matchup on Thursday. And starting your career in a place like Seattle. It's kind of like the exact opposite of starting your career in a place like Coors or Great American Ballpark, where it's possibly the best place to pitch in baseball. There's based on park factors. There's less home runs there. There's less hits on balls in play. There's more strikeouts. It's a really soft place to debut, and that Mariners offense also not scary in the slightest. So it's a really good landing spot for Kumar Rocker. I think the whole thing could be a lot of fun. He mixes the two seamer. He has a little changeup he'll throw once in a while. It's a true starters package, and I'm very excited to see how this turns out.
Yeah, remember before he got hurt, like he was on par with Jack Leiter in terms of being like could be the top pitching prospect in that draft. Like everybody wanted him. The Mets drafted him. Didn't quite work out. We could skip over that part. We got another big debut. The Yankees finally decided that no, Alex Verdugo did not give them the best chance to win. They called up Jasson Dominguez. The statement from Brian Cashman before they even promoted him was they weren't going to call up Dominguez unless he was going to play every day. They weren't calling him up to be on the bench. Then they called him up. So obviously our expectation should be that he was called up to play. I'm curious what you expect from Dominguez going forward. Do you think he needs to be rostered in all fantasy leagues? What's he going to give the Yankees in terms of, I guess production over the next 3 weeks? We can expect him, I guess, to play center field and bat sixth because that's what he did on Monday. So that kind of should be our expectation going forward.
I think it's one of the funniest things that's happened in baseball this year, or even in recent memory, that Jasson Dominguez gets called up and Alex Verdugo hits a home run the same game, almost like they lit the fire under him. But yeah, if we can trust Boone, and I don't know like the history of Coach Speak, again, still in football brain. I know there's that new Twitter account that's been amazing called the Coach Speak Index that grades every single coach on the truth and the validity of the things they've said in the past. I have no reason to distrust Aaron Boone with something like this. If he's going to play every single day and hit sixth and play center field, I think that center field is the key because it just seemed like Aaron Judge in center field became untenable for this team. It did. His metrics were bad. There seems like he's really undergoing some genuine, serious wear and tear in his body because he hasn't hit a home run in 11 days now, which for Aaron Judge, that feels like an eternity, especially as I wage through the playoffs in fantasy baseball, and Aaron Judge is now not hitting well. But it's interesting that in his first game, Stanton was the guy that went on the bench. Judge went to DH. Soto was in the outfield. Verdugo stayed in the outfield. But it does mean that there's a very natural progression for Verdugo to just be on the bench, Judge to go in the corner, and then Dominguez stay in center field. So curious what you think, because I know the results this year haven't been tremendous, but it's so much pedigree and there's so much talent. And there's so much just juice that he seems like he has to be picked up and owned everywhere.
I think every single league, even 10-team leagues, he needs to be picked up. You've got a guy with that kind of power in that stadium. He's got some speed to contribute there as well. The lineup is much deeper now with Soto and Judge and Jazz, and we know Stanton can get hot for stretches. And so I think Dominguez needs to be added because the profile is very fantasy friendly. You're just not going to find that kind of upside. I'm willing to take a gamble on him, and if he strikes out 33% of the time the rest of the way and doesn't give me a lot, like okay, but I need to roster that upside because I think it's incredibly valuable for you in fantasy. Beyond chasing upside, we've talked a lot about this point in the season of like really looking for categories that you need and playing matchups. And so Lou asks this question that he's in the second week of his playoff matchup in a 10-team mixed head-to-head, and he's desperate for wins. So this question looks like we're going to be targeting wins only. He's considering Spencer Arrighetti and Ben Lively tonight, and then Matthew Boyd and Kumar Rocker tomorrow. Let's start with the tonight. If you're looking for primarily wins, it's Arrighetti versus the A's, and it's Ben Lively versus the White Sox. Where would you go?
Can you do both? Like I would love to have both those guys in line if I can afford both. Because I think if you're hunting for wins, you definitely want Lively because he's facing the White Sox. And Arrighetti, I know he's coming off a start where he wasn't very good, and the A's do have a little more power than I think people give him for, a little more punch to really knock around a star like Arrighetti, who sometimes just seems very hittable. But Kumar and especially DeGrom later in the week, like you don't know if you're really getting past that fifth inning. Like maybe you're getting just to that fifth inning. You're probably going to be on much stricter workload limits. And they're both pitching against the Mariners, which is not exactly a difficult team to defeat. But I think DeGrom is scheduled to face. I mean, nothing's official yet, but that weekend series, the Mariners are going to have Bryce Miller, Logan Gilbert, an open spot, then George Kirby. So while the team is easy to defeat, those are not pitchers that are easy to defeat, especially just to leave the game after 5 innings with a lead. So I definitely lean with the Guardians. Go Boyd and Lively. Just keep hunting this White Sox team down for wins as much as you can.
Yeah, and Lou did say in the chat he can roster both, so I would roster both. I feel confident in both Arrighetti and Lively to get wins tonight. We mentioned that we like Rocker for tomorrow. I prefer Boyd for tomorrow with the possibility of getting a win. So that's one where, again, like if you're really just hunting for the win, I'd go Boyd over Kumar Rocker tomorrow. But again, I think they're both viable. Another possible option for tomorrow, let's say you can't get Boyd or Rocker, Bailey Falter against the Marlins. I think Bailey Falter is fine, not great, fine, but I think the Pirates are a better team than the Marlins. The Marlins are also starting Adam Mazur, and I expect the Pirates to totally light him up. So that is somebody that I would consider if you're looking for wins to stream. I know Uncle Ted saying Brant Herter has been money. Brant Herter has been money, but he gets the Orioles on Thursday night. And so I think you got to abandon that for right now. Especially if you're streaming for wins. I don't believe you're going to get that with Brant Herter against the Orioles.
Definitely not. This Ranger schedule is so beautiful to end the
So
year.
good.
They have these 2 games against Arizona. It's a shame that they're going to go to, again, a 7-man rotation, seems like, or at least have 7 pitchers pitching at a time, because it's Mariners, Blue Jays, Mariners, A's, Angels to end the season. I don't think there's a prettier schedule in baseball. I really think they're pushing some chips in because they're like, let's just send it back round 2. Let's see if we can actually sneak into this thing for no reason again, because they could win 70% of those games down the stretch. That is easy peasy.
And listen, the Rangers snuck in last time. I don't think they're sneaking in.
Reason.
I don't think they're sneaking in right now, but whatever. Let's get a hot stretch down the streak. Let's pick up these starters. Andrew Heaney's still on the wire in a lot of leagues. So that can be interesting. Jenna wants to know, in a 12-team head-to-head points, $260 budget, you can keep players for up to 3 years. So he's going with Duran for $1. I think that's Jarren Duran. Could be Yohan Duran. I don't know. We'll see. And James Wood for $5. Help me pick one between Wyatt Langford for $9, Cole Reagans for $6, Garrett Crochet for $5, Junior Caminero for $3, Shane McClanahan for $1.
Where are you going?
I really like Caminero for $3 and McClanahan for $1. Jetta is telling us it's Jarren Duran. So if I'm saying I'm keeping Jarren Duran for $1, I'm keeping James Wood for $5. My choice is Shane McClanahan for $1. I want to keep a pitcher if my other 2 keepers are hitters. A pitcher of McClanahan's caliber for $1 to me is too good to pass up. He's already throwing off the mound. They're not bringing him back this year, but just in terms of like his likely health for opening day 2025, I feel pretty good about McClanahan being full go on opening day 2025. I think Reagan's at 6 is fair value. Like that's a good quality, but I'll take the $5 savings and go with McClanahan.
Yeah, I think if the budget is that type, it's something, I don't know. McClanahan, I understand he's coming back. He's already going full throttle, but there's always like a difference of full throttle for the Tampa Bay Rays as there are for other teams. And I think we saw that this year with the Royals and a guy like Reagan's, where I think there probably is some added injury risk for him next year, as I say there would be for Crochet on here and probably for McClanahan as well. But the fact that they just looked at him and were like, you're going to get the ball every 5th day. You're going to be our ace. You're going to pitch as much as you possibly can. I think there's still probably a world where next year Shane McClanahan's ceiling is 115 innings, 120 innings maybe. I think there's a real chance of that. So the $1, the $5 savings is nice, but you have to be able to make up that $5 savings on making up those innings you could be losing there between the Reagans and the McClanahan difference.
Yeah, I get that for sure. But that's my. I would go with one of those 2 guys as your pitchers, and I'm just going to lean McClanahan just because of cost value, and that's it. I think they're both solid options. Cow Chat asks, does Brendan Donovan need to land on the IL to make Thomas Saggesse, who is being promoted today, have a chance at enough playing time to be worth adding at this crucial point in the season? As of now, I'm just checking this on Twitter right now. I have not seen a corresponding move announced for the Thomas Saggesse reported call up. My expectation would be that I think it's going to be Donovan going on the IL. He's missed the last 2 games.
With a foot.
I don't see why you call up Saggesse unless Donovan is going to miss time. So that's the expectation I'm operating under. And if that's the case, I think it's interesting because like the only competition for second base on the roster, if you're calling up Saggesse, is Jose Fermin. And Jose Fermin is hitting 148 in 38 games on the season. So I just don't see how he holds off Thomas Saggesse, who, listen, hasn't been setting the world on fire in AAA this year with a 253 batting average. But 20 home runs, 9 stolen bases in 125 games. That's an interesting bit of power and speed that could be worthwhile. I think this is more of a 15-team league ad than a 12-team league ad because I don't see a guy who, hit 250 with a 23% strikeout rate in AAA coming up and being like a 270 hitter. And Saggesse, 25 homers last year, 20 homers this year. So you're going to get maybe like a 20 homer full season MLB type of hitter. Nothing wrong with it, but it strikes me as like a high floor pickup rather than a rather than a high ceiling pickup.
Yeah, it's just also kind of rare to get a player that's called up this late in the season to be someone who's like not a value add, but a volume add, where he, like you just mentioned, the Cardinals somehow have such outfield depth and such horrible infield depth across the board. So he comes up, especially for Donovan, which it seems like it makes sense. Like you're looking for at bat tonight, you're looking at like 7-8 runs scored over the next few weeks. You could get 3 home runs, you could get 1 stolen base. Like those are needle movers this time of year from someone that's unexpected, and that's someone that's worth the right 12-team league. I think you can convince you as well if you need middle infield help. Just someone who's going to be in the lineup playing every day if you don't exactly have that right now.
Yep. But keep an eye on the corresponding move. We don't have it yet, but that is my expectation is that it's going to be Burleson. To the IL. Let's see. Questions. Get your questions in. You can ask on Twitch. You can ask on YouTube. You can ask things like Z City. Yeah. Z Smitty says, should I pick up Alexander Madison or Tank Bigsby? Alexander Madison did get 60% of the snaps in the backfield for the Raiders. So I think he might actually there might be more of a split backfield there than we think. So Madison for the floor, Bigsby for the ceiling. Depends on how deep your league is. The rest of you can ask baseball questions if you want, since we're going to primarily focus on baseball for the rest of the way. I put out an article today. Feel free to take a look at it over on NBCSports.com on streaming hitters. I looked at some lineups or some pitching lineups over the next week and a half, and the one team that stands out, we talked about it. There's a video of you embedded in the article talking about the Cubs.
There you go.
I'm talking about how the Cubs the Cubs matchups over the next few games. Let me just tell you, the Cubs are facing the Dodgers right now. Friday, the Cubs go to Coors. The starting pitchers the Cubs are going to get from Friday on: Kyle Freeland, Antonio Senzatella, Brian Baylock, JP Sears, Joey Estes, Mitch Spence, Patrick Corbin, Mackenzie Gore, Jake Irvin, DJ Hurst. That's from Friday until the following Sunday. That's a lot of matchups that like you either want or you have no problem with. Like even if you want to tell me, hey, JP Sears is fine. Hey, Mackenzie Gore has been good over the last few starts. I won't argue that, but I'm also not running from those guys as arms. And so I looked at guys who are 50% rostered or under. And that's Miguel Amaya. It's still Michael Busch. It's and Isaac Paredes has really dropped because he's hitting terribly. He's gonna play every day.
He's begun to heat up with the rest of this Cubs lineup, and we talked about last week that we were both really involved. We both really like Dansby and P. Crow Armstrong moving forward, but we said there was an issue. Like, the Cubs haven't really shaken up this lineup in a while. The Cubs finally did shake up the lineup over the weekend, and they pushed Dansby into the 2 hole for the last few games. Yesterday, I was watching that game late night after the Jets were embarrassed on Monday Night Football, and I saw Dansby Swanson and Seiya Suzuki do a double steal in the top of the ninth inning when the Cubs were already up 4 runs. Having both of them on one roster, those 2 steals vaulted me up 1 full spot in the standings, put me a half a place away from first place, and I was just like fist bumping. Merman's like, "What are you doing?" But I'm like, "You wouldn't understand." But this whole Cubs team is hot right now. They decimated. They crushed the Dodgers last night. They hit every single guy in the lineup had a hit. 8 out of 9 players had a hard hit ball. 6 out of 9 players scored a run. Like it was an onslaught. Every guy top to bottom of this lineup is hitting and hitting well right now. And I think that if you can get any piece of the starting 9, whether it's a Dansby Swanson share that's been on the waiver wire for too long, same with Isak Paredes, maybe in 10 or 12. Michael Busch had the all-time revenge game with 4 hits, 3 runs scored, 3 RBIs in LA against the Dodgers. He seemed to really be happy about that. We talked about Nico last week too, someone who's stealing more bases in the last 2 weeks than he has basically the entire season. You love Miguel Amaya as a 2-catcher target. If you Pete Crow Armstrong, who's been blazing hot for like 6 weeks now, if you can get a piece of any of these guys for this next stretch of 10 games, it could truly shift the standings.
Yeah, I agree. You got to jump in there. There's a good follow-up question here from Cow Chad who says, to piggyback on this Cubs thing, what is the 2025 ceiling for PCA? That's Pete Crow Armstrong. Could he be this year's version of Jarren Duran? I think no. I don't see the ceiling being that high. I get where you're going with it, right? I get where you're going with a guy who, had a big leap forward in batting average and power, was always a speed asset. But Duran struck out 24% of the time last year. He hit 295 last year. So he had shown batting average gains at a level that PCA has not shown over a full season. Now, I know he has a hot stretch right now, but, Jarren Duran hitting 295 over 102 games last year is very different than what PCA is doing in the hot month he's in the middle of right now. I also, Jarren Duran could easily finish this year with 25 homers. I don't know that I buy that PCA has 25 homer upside for next year. Not that he can't grow into it. But I guess he hit 20 home runs in the minors last year. So maybe, but I guess I would go a rung lower on my upside for PCA.
Yeah, I think significantly lower. There's definitely a major difference in archetype here. Like heading into the year, Jarren Duran had already hit a baseball 112.6 miles an hour. PCA still never hit one harder than 107 miles an hour. Jarren Duran is 28 right now. PCA is 22. When Jarren Duran was 22, he hadn't even played a game in AAA yet. Like there's just a very different development plan for both of these guys. I think when I see PCA, I think of 4 years ago, if we could have souped up Harrison Bader and you could have had 17 homer, 40 steal Harrison Bader playing amazing defense every single day, but probably still stuck in the bottom of a good lineup. I think that unless the helium gets crazy because of how the stolen bases and the shape of the season wind up, I could definitely see myself with tons of PCA next year between the 8th and 11th rounds, again, depending on how it winds up. But I'm drafting him for steals, and I'm hoping to get some power because I doubt the on-base percentage even trickles above 320. That'll keep him low in the order, like I said before. But 250 batting average would be a massive victory. It's just there's still not a lot of contact. There's still not a lot of a repeatable approach for PCA where you could see an MVP style breakout, first round breakout like Jarren Duran has done.
What is PCA outfield CJ Abrams? CJ Abrams right now, you're getting 19 homers, 28 stolen bases, and a 238 batting average, with a 21% strikeout rate. That's kind of what you could get.
That's kind of exactly, yeah.
You could get 20 homers, 30 steals in a full season of PCA with a 240 batting average. He's not going to hit leadoff, and that's part of where Abrams's value came. Was he was going to hit leadoff. He was going to run. There were some runs scored that were going to help there. We thought, obviously, there was going to be more growth in the batting average, maybe 25 homer power, whatever it was. But, that kind of feels a little bit like what you're getting. Or, if you want to go another way, another shortstop comparison, but outfield Anthony Volpe. Volpe's hitting 250 with 11 homers, 26 steals through 143 games. Could PCA be a 12 to 15 homer, 30 steal, 250 hitter next year? Sure, I buy that.
I think the upside from PCA comes from he's going to steal a lot more bases, I think, than where both those guys wind up this season. I mean, again, maybe that also is just a function of him being in the bottom of the order
in the bottom of the order.
consistently. Volpe hit leadoff, which is shocking to remember right now, for what, 10 weeks
Right.
this year? You're not stealing a base with Juan Soto up. And Abrams, I guess he has taken stolen bases back a little bit this year, but if you took Abrams his draft cost, you probably are a little disappointed, and you probably could have just found this in a PCA on the waiver wire. And I wonder how close their prices wind up next year. How far down Abrams now winds up. That's a really good comp.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. It'd be interesting to see. I'll be in on Abrams next year. I think if the price goes down. Remember how young he is. There's still fantasy value different than real life value, right? We've talked about what Abrams can do with the bat. We talked about this a little bit on the podcast. Jetta asks White Sox over 120 losses. They're at 112 right now. You and I both think yes.
Yeah. Did you?
Yes on this one.
Did you see the Chris Getz quote about their season?
Yeah, where he was like, yeah.
I'll tell you guys now, but I think it was one of the more painfully and brutally honest we've ever heard the baseball executive since Jerry Dipoto said a few years ago famously we're only shooting for 54% win percentage. But Chris Getz on the record, 125 loss pace team is on. If you would have told me we'd end up flirting with the record, I would have been a little surprised. Now, if you would have told me prior to the year we would have ended up with over 100 losses, maybe 105 or 110, I would not have been as surprised. This is the cards we've been dealt at this point. You just try to make the best of it. And that came from Jesse Rogers, ESPN. So that was Chris Getz being like, yeah, I think our ceiling was 100 losses. And that was like, that's a shocking thing for a general manager to say just straight up to the media like that. I think it probably has been received relatively poorly. I don't even think it's wrong that it has been, but it's shocking.
It's the truth. And also, like, listen, he's not beholden to the moves that were made from the management before him. So whatever, he throws them under the bus, like, so be it. It's kind of like, I know we're talking football here, but they asked the Titans coach about their performance against the Bears, where like the Bears didn't score an offensive touchdown in the game. The Bears were down by 14 points at one point in the game. The record for teams who don't score an offensive touchdown and were down by 14 points at one point in the game was 2-306 before last week. It's now 3-306. And they asked the Titans coach about the performance, and he said, if we had punted every single time on first down, we might have won the game. Like, that's basically just being like, my quarterback is terrible, my offense sucks. Like, sometimes people are just going to be brutally honest, and like, like there's nothing you could do. Like, I kind of like the refreshing aspect of it in some way. Cal Chad also saying it's to say it's the cards we were dealt when it's the cards you bought and sold.
I mean, partially, like
but
gets found.
He's a new GM.
Yeah, he did sign Eric Fedde, and he was like kind of one of their key factors in the first half. He could have decided to keep Eric Fedde to try and avoid this record, but he's like, this avoiding this record doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. I'd rather get back assets for this older asset I have right now. Like same with Crochet. They could have just pushed Crochet all year and not thought about the future and been stupid, but that's not what a functional executive will do. So I think Callahan, the new coach of the Titans too, he's even more refreshing with this, talking about like advanced data in his press conferences. He's kind of like a less nerdy, like more football-y version of McDaniel, where he'll just start saying things that are probably way over the bulk of reporters and fans' heads and just like let it run. Like punt on first down, people would be like, what are you talking about? But he's just literally thinking about like probabilistically, if I didn't throw those pick sixes, we win that game, even though one of the punts did get blocked. But yeah, I like this new era of the executives just and the coaches just saying exactly what's on their mind.
I agree. And I think, like, listen, I know, again, the point here is like, the White Sox dodged an injury bug and we're still worse than projections. I mean, I don't really know that we could say they dodged. I mean, they dodged the injury bug to an extent. Like, listen, I know Yohan Moncada isn't great, but he was their starting third baseman and didn't play at all this year. Luis Robert has only played in 86 games, right? He was their quote unquote stud. And I think by the time he got back on the field, this team was so done that like you could tell he's, kind of barely trying right now. Andrew Vaughn has had a full season. That's not a Chris Getz thing, right? They got as much. He was the number one pick, but like, they got as much out of him as they could. I think the Luis Robert injury, the Eloy Jimenez was hurt and then traded, the Yohan Moncada injury. Listen, the signing of Paul DeJong, that provided a lot of value, and then they were
Yeah,
able
I
to
forgot
trade
that one
him.
too.
The signing of Eric Fetty provided some value, and they were able to trade him. I think really getting anything at this point for Eloy Jimenez is totally fine because he had totally fallen off, and you get that contract off the books. Like, I don't begrudge, Chris Getz anything
No,
in terms of like what he was able to put onto the field and the moves he was able to make. Like, they did the best with what they had. They, getting Miguel Vargas, like, he wound up maybe not being anything, but like, that's a gamble that you can take for
just might as
like
well.
a player who's not really a part of your future. And then we'll see where things go, with their pitching staff. They're going to get Crochet back for a full season and probably without any workload limitations. They were able to get Drew Thorpe, who should be a solid starter for them. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not
Jairo
optimistic.
Iriarte. Yeah.
Yeah, Iriarte. I'm not optimistic.
They also, down the
but yeah.
stretch, 12 of their remaining 17 games are the A's, the Angels, and the Tigers. It's not crazy they win some of those. Like maybe they do
Sure,
stave
they get a
off the record.
couple.
Maybe they keep the Mets in that spot forever, like my dad wants. But I think that
Who knows?
yeah, whatever.
Who knows? They could. But Jeddah brings up a good point too about the White Sox. Like, talk about that sale for Moncada and Kopech trade. And that's where anytime your team is dealing like surefire prospects that are not like legitimately on the doorstep, it's always a risk, right? Moncada was a sure thing, but he was also a few years away, and he also, injuries played a part. He never quite developed. Kopech never quite developed. I think that you never really know with prospects. And I know that like the Sale trade looks great. I mean, you're looking at what he's doing right now, but Sale was good for the Red Sox. Like, people forget.
Won a World Series.
Exactly. But like 2017, he went 17-8 in over 200 innings. He had a 2.90 ERA. In 2018, he only threw 160 innings, but he had a 2.11 ERA. He won 12 games. Like, and then the wheels fell off and he got hurt. But even if you only got 2 years of elite production out of Chris Sale, you got 2 years of elite production and won a World Series. So that was a huge win as a trade for the Red Sox. Cow Chad asked about Andy Rodriguez. I think the Pirates have already said that he is not going to be up this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he was out. He's been out like almost the entire year. I believe that they were talking about him just needing to get his timing back. He's currently he just got promoted today to Altoona, which is AA. But also remember that Joey Bart is now off the IL, and Joey Bart has been really, really good. And Yasmani Grandal has been fine as a second catcher. So I don't really know if they're going to rush to call up Andy Rodriguez for like the final week or two of the season and carry a third catcher. Remember that they're also pretty much DHing Andrew McCutchen every day right now. Now that O'Neal Cruz has shifted to the outfield. So I don't really know that you're going to call up Andy Rodriguez to push Andrew McCutchen out of the lineup. Like, I just don't. I think McCutchen means too much to that organization in a season that's not going anywhere with a catcher who is coming off of like an extensive shoulder injury that I don't see it why the Pirates would do it. And even if they do, I don't know that it's relevant enough for fantasy leagues that you would want to be picking up Andy Rodriguez at any point. But if Joey Bart's on the wire, go back and get him.
Here's a fun question. Might not be super relevant right now, but pound for pound, who do you think starts a catcher for opening day for the Pirates next year? Do you think it's still Bart?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Over Henry Davis?
I think Henry Davis is done behind the plate. Like, really? I think Henry Davis always had a lot of questions about him defensively as a catcher. He needed to really hit to make up for the defensive deficiencies. I think Andy Rodriguez was always going to be a better catcher for them than Henry Davis because he's a really good defender. I think Joey Bart emerging as a really solid MLB catcher means that Henry Davis needs to play the outfield or DH, or that could be it. Like, I think a combo of Joey Bart and Andy Rodriguez gives you good offense and solid defense, and I think that's the way the Pirates would go. It makes sense to me if that's the way the Pirates go.
I can see it too.
We'll stick on catchers. Lou is asking if JT Realmuto is droppable. We know he missed some time earlier in the year with a knee injury. Right now, he's dealing with what they're just calling a knee bruise. It's a contusion. So it shouldn't really have any impact on the earlier knee injury, which caused him to miss time. However, the Phillies have no real reason to rush Realmuto. They have a 7-game lead right now. They're tied for the best record in the NL. They pretty much have the postseason locked up. So if Realmuto's knees are at all troublesome, they could give him more time off. So I think that's kind of where Lou's coming with this is like, if Realmuto, instead of starting 75% of the games, is starting 55%, 60%, is he worth dropping in a one catcher format? Other options are Bart Langoliers, Ivan Herrera, Miguel Amaya, and Nick Fortes. Where do you land with those catchers? Or just sticking with JT Realmuto?
It's just so frustrating because Realmuto finally got hot for the first time this year, like over the last 3 weeks or a month or so. So it's a shame. I mean, hang on for a little while. I think that while they're not really competing for the division right now, I don't think the Phillies are going to take their foot off the gas because I think they really, really would want to get the number 1 seed. So if they make it to a series against the Dodgers, they can play home games. And we know how serious Citizens Bank Park is during home games in the playoffs. But from that list you gave, I think Amaya would be the top of it for me. I think I'd basically just move Amaya to the front and then go Amaya, Bart, Langoliers, Herrera, Fortes. But I'd probably still want to extend, like, just wait 24, 48 hours to see if you can keep Realmuto in the lineup. Because I think based on the way he's been hitting, I think you're going to get a much better version of him for the next 3 weeks than you've gotten for the past 4 months, weirdly.
Yeah. I also would say, like, listen, this weekend in particular, the A's get the White Sox. That could be interesting for Shea Langoliers. And then the A's get the Cubs next week. And they do get Imanaga, but then they also get Jordan Wicks and Javier Assad. So that's interesting. But yeah, I think Bart is at the top of that list for me. And then Amaya, Langoliers would kind of depend on if you needed power or not. But Lou is saying he can't afford to keep Realmuto day to day through the weekend. I think it depends on like when you can do waiver pickups. I'd like to wait another day or two and see if he can get on the field Tuesday or Wednesday. I know a lot of leagues have like Wednesday night and Sunday pickups. So maybe you just give him, Tuesday, Wednesday. And if you can make pickups in that league, like whenever, then I would just check when the lineups come out Wednesday. If Realmuto doesn't play today, if Realmuto is not in the lineup and the lineup comes out on Wednesday, I think you can make a move. Like if your season is on the line, then your season is on the line. It doesn't matter if Realmuto comes back next week if you held on to him this whole week and lost. So you have to make those decisions on your own team. Like if you don't think you can take that 0, then drop it. And if you're in a league where you can do like daily pickups like this, all depends on your format. Like if you can also add guys and maybe you don't have a acquisition max or it's pretty low, like maybe drop a pitcher who, like, maybe you have a pitcher pitching tonight.
Yeah.
After he goes, drop him, pick up a catcher for tomorrow. And then you can maybe go with 2 catchers for a day or 2 and then drop a catcher, pick up a pitcher for the second half of the week. Like you can play around with stuff like that.
Yeah, I am in my league. It's very competitive right now. 3 teams at the top of a Roto dynasty, like I mentioned before. I'm in this very secure spot in saves and holes where I'm like 8 in each direction. So it's very unlikely I can make do with that. And I've been carrying either 3 or 4 closers all year. I dropped Evan Phillips just to pick up Austin Gomber for the 1 start he has this week on the road because I'm chasing Ks, I'm chasing a ratio, I'm chasing quality starts. So you have to make those little moves. Someone in that same league who I'm up at the top with, he said based on his projection model right now, he's just not carrying a catcher. It's 12-team league, and he's going catcherless in the starting lineup, so you can have an extra pitcher to rotate it in and out. So it's just anything that you think you can do to find yourself the edge for the categories that you need at the end of the year. You have to be cutthroat and willing to maybe try some crazy things you might not have thought about otherwise, especially not earlier in the season.
Yep. And that's a point, like, in Joey Bart's favor. He made my streaming hitters article today as well. Starting tomorrow, his schedule of pitchers is Adam Mazur to end the Marlins series. Then he gets Alec Marsh, Michael Wacha, Brady Singer, Andre Palante, Lance Lynn, Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Nick Martinez, Rhett Lauder, and Brandon Williamson. So Sonny Gray is really the only like starter I desperately want to avoid there. Michael Wacha's been good. I don't know that you need to avoid Michael Wacha, but like that's a pretty good stretch for Pirates hitters. And so yeah, I think maybe I'd try to add Bart today if you can drop a pitcher that you're not using, or or tomorrow if you have a streaming starting pitcher today, and then move on from them and have Bart and Realmuto, and then give yourself an extra day or something to see what happens with Realmuto. I think that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah, same.
Let's see. And any other
prospect
questions?
here.
Yeah. I think no for this. Jetta asked, any chance of seeing Roman Anthony called up? No. I don't think so. I think
Next year.
it's a matter of crowding, right? The Red Sox are only 3 games out of the wild card. Weirdly, even though they've been playing terrible down the stretch, they are going to push to try to get into the postseason. Right now, the outfield is already Tyler O'Neill and William Abreu and Jaron Duran and Ceddanne Rafaela. Now that Trevor Story's back, is now firmly back in the outfield. Yoshida's DHing. Like there are too many bodies in the outfield mix for the Red Sox right now that until they give up and decide they're not going to play some of these guys like a Yoshida or whatever, I just don't see any reason why they would call up Anthony. Obviously, Tyler O'Neill could get hurt in any instant, and then maybe that changes it. I just at this point don't see it happen.
No, me neither. It's just he's too good of a prospect. It's not the time of year to take the shot on him for his first cup of coffee. I think just next year we'll see him. We could get like the 2 years ago Jordan Walker, big spring training, make the team right away. But right now it's not going to happen. When it does happen, priority.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they have the Red Sox have 4 guys at AAA that are in the top 26 prospects in all of baseball, and who knows when they're going to start the year. It could be at the very beginning of next year.
Yeah.
Uncle Ted always also asked about Moises Ballesteros, who's the 20-year-old catcher for the Cubs. I also don't think we're going to see him this year. I know that he's got 59 games in AAA already. He is not on the 40-man roster, so they need to clear space for him. But also Miguel Amaya has been playing much better of late, and so I just don't know why you'd call up your 20-year-old catcher if you're – how old is Amaya again? I know he's young. If your 25-year-old catcher is actually kind of finally starting to play well. And Christian Betancourt has been totally fine as a veteran backup. He's hitting
7
pretty
RBI
well.
game, yeah.
Right. I think it's more likely that like Ballesteros and Amaya make up the catching duo for the Cubs.
It'd be nice
for most of next year. Would be my guess on that one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's we're gonna head out here. Before, if you have any other final questions, you can get them in. Just want to hear kind of how you're stacking up heading into this final week, James. You got a lot of teams competitive. Are you still kind of like grinding? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mentioned that one full season row that I'm really grinding in, and then there's a 2-week playoff matchup in week 2 right now where I have until 9:00 tonight to decide between Ryan Nelson, Zach Gallen, or Jacob deGrom for the last start. And it's a strikeout quality start heavy base points league, and I'm racking my brain. I just want them to give me a day deGrom will pitch so I can do that. I'm a little scared about Ryan Nelson because the Brewers are weirdly good against righties, and Gallen's been so hot and cold, but the Rangers lineup hasn't been great either. So it's a matchup where I'm so much better than the other team, but I had a bad first week and he had a really good first week, and I'm way too close right now, and I'm really scared. I put Tyler O'Neill on my bench yesterday for Brian Reynolds. Horrible mistake, and now I feel like I'm kind of chasing a little bit.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, you really kind of can overmanage in these final few weeks when you are trying to like get every single point down. But yeah, good luck to you. I had a team that I was co-managing in a head-to-head league that was first place all year, and then lost in the semifinals last week, which is always a total bummer. You know, the injuries of like Austin Riley, Wilson Contreras, Tyler Glasnow, like all happening heading into the playoffs is just a little bit too hard to come by. And yes, that was the league where, as Couch had pointed out, we streamed Patrick Corbin in that league last week, and the first start was fine, and the second start did not get us what we needed. But at that point, it was irrelevant. The other team was just a heater. The other team hit like their team batting average was 500 as of like Friday morning, and it was like cool, or just like they were just racking up the offensive stats, and it wasn't going to do anything. I'm in first in a bunch of NFBC draft and hold, so I'm trying to close the gap there. I'm in second in a Rotowire online championship, which is, a 12-team league. So I don't think I can get first, but second win some money. So I'm just trying to hold on there. I'm in second in my home league, and fading fast. That team has lost Vinny Pasquantino, Austin Riley, and Corey Seager in the last couple of weeks. So I'm just trying to piece together offense in any way I can across the finish line. But that's like, listen, that's one of the things at this time of year. Like, I'll put Band-Aid on a gaping wound and just hope it can. I'll walk far enough that it'll get to the end of the season before it happens. So yeah, it is tough. And I'm in turf, which is one of those earth leagues, and I moved up into the top 3. I don't think I can get first in that league, but trying to get competitive. But I think hey, listen, you're just trying to close out in all your leagues, be respectable, get the best showing you possibly can. And take some lessons into next year.
That's it.
We're gonna stay here with you guys for the next couple of weeks on the Rotoworld Fantasy Baseball Q&A. Will help get you to the finish line. If you have any questions, you can ask James and I always on Twitter. You can find James at James_Schiano. You can find me at Samulski NYC. We appreciate you guys sticking around. We will see you next Tuesday on the Rotoworld Fantasy Baseball Q&A.
Bye, guys.